everybody. Welcome to another episode of Missed Calls with Coach Miller. I am, of course, Coach Miller, and this episode is brought to you by Home by SMCI. It's hot outside. The sun has already started to shine again. It was nice and cool just a little bit ago. It's Missouri, so it's probably going to warm up to about 95 here before it gets any later in the evening. So if your air conditioning unit has gone out, mine has not, knock on wood, but it has been serviced in the last year by Home by SMCI. They came out, took care of it. They treated my home like it was their home, because that's what they do. That's why they're called Home by SMCI. So give them a call today, 636-337-4444, and have them take care of your air conditioning needs today. So big news in the NBA. We've talked a lot about NBA on our podcast here lately because the NBA draft is actually tonight. But some big news has been going down here recently. In the last week, the Phoenix Suns, who had played in the NBA Finals a couple years ago with future Hall of Famer Chris Paul, they are trading Chris Paul. They traded Chris Paul to the Washington Wizards for Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal waived his no trade clause, and now he's getting out of the dumpster fire that is the Washington Wizards, going to Phoenix. So a lot of people assumed that Chris Paul would be finishing his career with the lowly Wizards. Now, fast forward a couple days, the Wizards turn around and they are trading Chris Paul to the Golden State Warriors for Jordan Poole. Chris Paul has a $30 million expiring contract, right around that kind of money, whereas Jordan Poole had signed a long-term extension. Now, this helps out the Warriors a little bit because they now have opened up some cap space to go and sign maybe a couple of players, because Draymond Green also has declined his player option. Of course, they could go and try to re-sign Green. Who knows how that's going to turn out. But this is kind of big for Chris Paul because Chris Paul was not expected to be playing with the Golden State Warriors, obviously. But Paul gets a bad rap. And I don't think there's anybody who watches basketball who doesn't think that Chris Paul is a future Hall of Famer. There's no doubt about it. In his 15-year career, he has put up the numbers. He has played at a high level. He's one of the better defenders in the NBA. He can obviously distribute the ball. But why do people not like Chris Paul so much? And the answer comes down to they just don't think he can win it. Now, Dan Marino, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, never won a Super Bowl, only played in one. And people hold that against Dan Marino, considering that he was one of the best at his position in a time where they still weren't throwing the ball around the field. Chris Paul has been one of the most perfect pure point guards that there has been in NBA history. And he's a fantastic player. He's a franchise-altering player. And I'll give you the reason why, and as far as that's concerned. So Chris Paul, in his 15 years, has played for a number of teams. He was drafted by the Hornets back when they were in New Orleans, when nobody cared about the New Orleans Hornets. But he made that team relevant too. He made the playoffs out of his 5 seasons with the Hornets. He made the playoffs 4 times. Now, in his 15-year career, Chris Paul has only missed the playoffs 1 time. So you're telling me that this guy isn't a franchise-altering player? He's taken the Hornets to the playoffs when he played for them, all but 1 year. Okay, he almost gets traded to the Lakers, but David Stern says no, we don't want super teams in the NBA. Okay, so he goes to the Clippers. The Clippers, because when I was growing up, Lloyd Vault was the best player on the Clippers. Nobody knew anybody on the Clippers. They were terrible, laughingstock, had been forever. Now all of a sudden the Clippers are relevant. You have Lob City, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. Those guys are playing high levels of basketball. Had opportunities to make it to the NBA Finals, never did. Ran into an assortment of great teams in the West. Now, he also goes and plays for Houston. What does he do for Houston? Playing with a bunch of ball hogs, especially when I say that, James Harden. They make the playoffs. Matter of fact, they had a chance, if he wouldn't have gotten hurt, to beat Golden State one of those years. Then he goes and plays for Oklahoma City, which this is Oklahoma City after Kevin Durant, after Russell Westbrook, after James Harden. They're not supposed to be relevant. But guess what? They make the playoffs and they lose in 7 games to Houston. Then he goes to Phoenix. Phoenix hadn't done anything in a long time. I mean, like, in a long time. And what did he do? Takes them to the finals. So why the hate? I don't understand why people dislike Chris Paul. I mean, he's obviously personable. He's on a lot of commercials. He's a person that people will you know buy. I mean, he obviously can sell because of his personality. Because I mean, he's a good looking dude. He's personable, whatever. But why do a lot of people not like Chris Paul? When you say greatest point guards of all time, I mean, obviously you're going to say Magic. You're going to say Oscar Robertson. You're going to say John Stockton. You're going to have a hard time getting people to say Chris Paul. Why? Because he hasn't won. John Stockton didn't win either. He went to 2 finals, didn't win. Okay, my Bulls took care of that. So why is so much hate for Chris Paul? Why do y'all hate Paul? It's a great question. I don't know. I was actually talking with a few people the other day and brought it up, and they're just like, I just don't like Chris Paul. Like, okay, why? He don't win. He doesn't have any rings. That doesn't take away from what he's done as a player. Again, you can't take too many guys. You can say LeBron. Obviously, LeBron goes to a team and all of a sudden they're relevant. Yeah, because he's LeBron. But then start naming other players. Even Jordan. I mean, he played at whatever age with the Wizards for 2 years. He made him relevant? Yeah, because he's Michael Jordan. But did he alter the franchise? See, Chris Paul alters the franchise because he knows how to distribute. He knows how to not play. I don't have to have the ball all the time. I can I can do other things, and that's something that a lot of these guys just don't do. They're so worried about me and getting mine and playing an ISO game. And the NBA is full of those guys, of volume scorers, even volume scoring point guards who have to have the ball all the time and shoot it. Now, Paul could score, and he's not going to score as much for the Warriors. As a matter of fact, he'll probably be in a reserve role for the first time in his entire career, given the fact that he's got Steph Curry playing in front of him. And I don't see Golden State putting Paul and Curry on the court at the same time too many times. It just wouldn't be a good idea. But at the same time, you've got two guys who scored over 20,000 points playing on the same team. They're going to be legitimate again. They have to find some pieces. They have to figure out what they're going to do. Either try to re-sign Draymond Green or try to get some other players that are going to fill those big men spots. But the thing about Chris Paul is he is going to make that team better. It's hard to believe that the Warriors can be better, but now they have somebody who can play point and that can do some things when Steph Curry is not on the court. Now, I'm sure in certain situations they might put both those guys on the court. Just think about how easy it is now to find Steph Curry when you got Chris Paul passing the ball to him. Either way, I think what people are really missing here is the fact that Chris Paul, not only we can all say, yes, he's a future Hall of Famer. Well, there's a lot of future Hall of Famers that people just don't like. And Chris Paul is one of them. And I just don't understand why there's so much hate towards Paul and what he's done in his career. When we all look back, and I'm sure that we'll find out how his career ends and what he decides to do as far as playing is concerned. He might turn around and finish his career with Golden State. He might sign a league minimum and go and coattail ride to a championship somewhere. Who knows what he's going to do? But the fact of the matter is people should be giving Chris Paul a lot more love than what they do. There's no reason to hate the guy. He's done so. He's a franchise altering player. Probably one of the reasons why David Stern didn't want him to go to the Lakers, because he knew how much of an impact Chris Paul would have had. And I think that's one of the missed calls that people are getting today. Don't be hating on Paul. Okay, he's a good dude. Thank you again for tuning in for another episode of Missed Calls with Coach Miller. You can check out this show on YouTube, Facebook. You can also listen to them. We'll be uploading those to Apple Podcasts and all of our other audio podcasts. And you can also catch me and the other guys on the Coach's Box every week, unless we decide to take a week off. But again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Missed Calls with Coach Miller. You guys have a great week. God bless. We'll see you all later.
Are you tired of boring sports talk shows? Then tune in to the Coach's Box. These guys don't just talk sports. They talk about whatever the heck they want to talk about. Watch new episodes of the Coach's Box each week for free on Facebook, YouTube, or the